Welcome back to Business is Fucking Hard. My guest today is Alexandra Sangster, founder of the Sarjesa Group and owner of Buzzed Nutrition. Starting Sarjesa while still in university, Alexandra saw an opportunity to create a brand of tea that meant more than just a beverage. Alexandra and her companies are purpose-driven, focused on much more than just profit. Branding that connects to community, business that empowers women, and product that makes a difference. I hope you enjoy this episode. Hi there. I'm Trevor Coote, and this is Business is Fucking Hard, the podcast where business owners pull back the curtain and talk about the realities of owning a business. We'll hear their stories, learn some lessons, and have some fun along the way. Thanks for joining us. Alexandra Sangster, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. And we are meeting for the first time. I've had a handful of guests where this was the case. I didn't know the background coming into a brand new story. You and I were introduced through Hamish Knox, who is a previous guest of the podcast and had a great episode. So welcome. I'm looking forward to hearing your story. As I do with all guests, Alexandra, I'm going to start with my opening question. What was your introduction to business and entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so both my parents are very entrepreneurial. My dad was in different businesses and like really interested in business modeling, but my mom was really into small business. We grew up and she babysat kids before and after school, as well as taught art classes on the weekends and cleaned houses. And she did a lot of different things just to kind of make it work. And that was my first introduction to entrepreneurship.
And I've always thought my parents were very risk averse. When I was growing up, they didn't step out on that limb. Both of them had government jobs, and I always looked at that as being kind of the potential to move me in one of two directions. I could see that and kind of mimic their security and the risk aversion, or look at it and go, I'm going to go in the completely opposite direction, which is obviously the choice I made. You obviously kind of didn't see that and were and became opposed to the challenges that came with watching your parents be in business and
I didn't want to
all of
be an
that kind of.
entrepreneur. I became an entrepreneur on accident. Yeah, my business started as a class project at university and kind of grew and grew. Before that, I wanted to be a professor um, of post-colonial theory at university. Yeah, I did my whole like senior thesis and everything on it.
That's amazing. Where were you for university?
Mount Royal University, just in Calgary.
Oh yeah. And that's where you met Hamish. Was he came in and guest lectured? And tell me about that transition then, the project that you did and what ended up turning into kind of your entrepreneurial path.
Yeah, so I was a student in the English arts program. And I did my whole degree kind of with a focus on post colonial thinking and was really involved in Indigenous studies and community service learning. And as part of a class project, we learned about missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. The class was phenomenal. It was led by Dr. Renee Watchman, and she assigns projects at the end of the semester as an option instead of writing a traditional paper. So the prompt was how we can bring activism and impact into our everyday experience. And so I was at my favorite local coffee shop and I looked down at their teas and I was like, I could make a tea that raised awareness for violence towards women and girls and brought people into conversation and used local ingredients. So that was what I did for my final project, and I did a theory paper on like how it would affect change. And I handed it in and I couldn't stop thinking about it. And 2 years later, I decided I was going to try it as a business. And I enrolled in one business class. And from there, it kind of grew. The first iteration was called Solidarities. And then I ran into a trademark issue and a partnership split. And over the next like 10 months, it became Sarjesa. And then Sarjesa really changed shape and became what it is today over the course of like 6 years.
So tell me about that. The first iteration. Let's go back to you kind of deciding to give it a try. what like, you had done the project around the tea itself. What did it look like to did you build an entire business plan for the business itself? What did those first kind of steps look like for you?
Well, I mean, the very first step before I even took a business class or had a partner or anything was that I had these brown craft bags and I put a sticker on it, and I'd connected with an artist about using one of his paintings as like part of the project. And that was the thing. And I knew I was going to put leaves in it. I didn't know what flavors or anything. And then I went and I worked with my aunt who she had a herbal shop and picked some like ingredients and mix them all together so that I would have prototype blends. And that was actually what I first started telling people is this is my idea, this is what I'm going to make.
And what did I want to talk about the teas themselves, because I want to dive into kind of some of that representation and how you found that connection to, the communities that you're looking to represent. But you started with the prototypes. You had the brown bags. You had the artist's kind of logo, for lack of a better word, kind of an icon recognition. Um, did From a financial perspective, like, did you know that this was going to open as a retail endeavor, or was it going to be kind of community markets, or what was that first introduction to sales?
I imagined it being that I would sell these products at like farmers markets and community events. I
Yeah.
don't think I could have imagined what it has grown into or where it's going. Looking back now, is it's like we had this beautiful piece of art that was on the packaging, and I really was focused on supporting missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and raising awareness in that like kind of specific realm. What I didn't realize was that I wasn't going to solve the issue of violence towards women just by donating portions of proceeds. And I didn't realize that as I learned more, I would actually fall in love with using business models to solve social problems. And I learned that when I was spending time, I worked as a summer student and then as a student liaison at the Trico Charitable Foundation. And they're all about social entrepreneurship, using business
Yeah.
models to solve social problems. And that was where I really learned like the full potential of what I could build if I could just think about the model in a bit more of a nuanced way.
And that makes a lot of sense. Like, just the introduction that you shared around the concept and the motivation for it, to move into kind of a social enterprise, a B Corp kind of model for this type of business, makes a tremendous amount of sense. So before we go even more into that, you kind of alluded to a couple of things: the trademark issue and the partnership piece. Tell me about kind of the staying on the path of the business itself. You launch the business, go to register a name. You've got a business partner, it sounds like, initially. What did all of that look like? And what did it was it sounds like a lot of it wasn't super structured and written down on paper compared to where you're going, but how much of it was part of the strategy?
I mean, for trademarks, I'm pretty sure we just tried to file the trademark ourselves, and then registered the business as a corporation ourselves. And it wasn't done properly, which led to a lot of headache and heartache, but was such a amazing opportunity to learn. But I think like when you have a business like this that is like heart work, um, you almost can't stop. Like the learnings come and they're really hard and they feel really personal because at the beginning you don't have so many learnings to fall back on. But they are extremely hard, and you think every small thing or every bump is going to take you out, and it doesn't. You the why behind the business and that it's so connected to you almost like keeps you moving forward even through this like total struggle.
You you hit on probably 3 or 4 themes of the podcast just in that little explanation. One of them is, and you said like the learning that you got from the challenges around the trademark piece. One of the things that comes up so frequently on the podcast is the amount of education that you get in business that you can't learn in school. Like you could take a business degree, you can take a master's in business administration, you can do all of those things, and you're just not going to learn the things that you can learn by doing in entrepreneurship and business ownership. And then the other piece, and any guests or sorry, any listeners that have been kind of hearing the podcast over time are getting tired of hearing me talk about this one, but you use the word why, and very often I'm connecting it back to purpose before profit. An early guest said the words purpose before profit. Certainly that obviously plays a bigger part when you're a social enterprise, but the way that you framed it, always coming back to your why, and you think that these little things are going to put you out, and then they don't, because you're inspired by the why. And I think that speaks such volumes when you're talking about business ownership.
Yeah. I think you're going to have struggles whatever path you choose. And definitely entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart. But if I'm going to have struggles, it might as well be working on something that I believe is going to have a big impact versus like struggling on something that I don't care about.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. So tell me about the partnership piece. Again, I don't want to just focus on challenges when it comes to business, and maybe this wasn't a challenge at all. Maybe it was just a natural. So, what did that piece look like for you?
Yeah, that was really hard. It was a challenging situation, and having to buy out another shareholder is never easy. It was just we weren't a good fit. Um, and that was really hard to recognize because I felt like I had failed. I had an, a woman partner and we couldn't make it work. And how can I run a social enterprise that's about supporting women if I can't even make it work in a partnership? Or like, I guess we were shareholders, we weren't partners technically, but it still felt really uncomfortable. And so then I really was afraid for a long time of engaging in any sorts of like community efforts or being in partnerships. I got really, really sad for maybe a year. I really struggled to the point where I had these friends who they moved around their schedules so that they could be in my final year of classes with me so that I wouldn't have to do group projects with anybody who was a stranger just because I couldn't handle the idea of like having to do a project partnership with other students. It was really bad.
Oh, that's unfortunate because the realities, I mean, the realities that come with business is that things do happen, and we can't force these relationships to work. And I mean, again, it goes back to kind of what you were saying earlier, that these are all learning experiences and things that you can kind of grow from.
Exactly. And I think that part of it was being inexperienced and not knowing what questions to ask or how to think critically about the
Right.
advice people were giving me because it was a time, and I don't know if times have changed that much, but it was a time where entrepreneurs were really encouraged to find a co founder, go get venture capital, and grow as fast as possible. And when that is the environment that you're kind of told is the way to do things, it can feel like so devastating when it doesn't work. And then over time, I started to learn that, like, no, lots of other people have partnership breakups, lots of other people part ways. And it is really about how you're going to take the lessons forward. And it was such an impactful learning for me. It just took me a long time to kind of get out of my own head and see the lessons.
So like absolutely. And I think if I went back, out of the 40 or 50 episodes, whatever we've done of this podcast, it's not a high percentage, but certainly there's a number of people who have had a very similar story. And not always, in some cases, it was just the natural move that partnerships moved in different directions, and others it was more mimicking your experience. So certainly not an abnormal thing.
Right. And when you're 23 and you're starting a or like a business as a class project that like grows, the only other entrepreneurs that I really knew were the entrepreneurs who were super successful, and we were only hearing their stories in a way that was like highlighting their successes. So it was like this chamber where I didn't really know. Uh, and what I really like now as a, a pretty old entrepreneur, like I'm not 23 anymore, and I have people around me who've like they've done the circuit. They've had partnerships break up. They've had businesses that fail, all of these different things. I've seen many of my friends struggle and go through the ups and downs, and what a beautiful thing it is to watch the people around you grow into themselves in the way that a business makes you. And then really encouraging other people to talk out loud about their problems and about how they're solving it so that we can all learn together as a community.
And I mean, that was the perfect explanation of this podcast, right? The motivation for this podcast was to create a safe space for business owners to open up and be vulnerable and talk about the realities of owning a business. Because I do feel like all the business books that we see out there, all the stories of the multi-billion-dollar corporations that have made it, tell us the story of a company that's made it, and there's the small and medium-sized businesses that still struggle every single day and are on the path to making it all the time. And so yeah, I think all of what you just said articulates exactly why I built this little community as well.
That's awesome.
um yeah, no, thank you for that. um Going back, I want to get a sense of timeline. So because there was an overlap of you being in class and starting this business. How, like, it started as a class project. How much of the business was kind of operational, but when you were still in your last year of school and your friends were kind of joining your classes to help you out?
There were 2 years where I had an operational
Okay.
business and was in university at
Okay.
the same time. I did, my friend Paul from Deepwater Farms calls it a victory lap, which is a fifth year on a 4-year degree. And
Oh
I
yeah.
did one of those just so that I could do an entrepreneurship minor. And that was where I met all my entrepreneurship friends.
Yeah. I did a victory lap as well, but it's because I changed degrees. I love that. So I you finish your fifth year, you did a couple of years of school with the degree or with the business operational. What did that transition then look like when you were able to commit full time to the business? Did you see a noticeable difference in kind of what you were picturing for the business, and now that you have a full time commitment to it?
I didn't actually transition full time into the business for like 5 years. I didn't,
Okay.
I worked full time. So I worked at the Trico Charitable Foundation as the liaison for student social entrepreneurship. And then I became the operations manager for Trico Communities, which was helping my friend who's an entrepreneur, Patrick Chu, with his two of his startups. And I could have done the business full time for like many years, but there's a gap when you are CEO at 22, 23, and you only ever work for yourself. How do you know, like, when you need HR or when you need an accounting department, things like that? And I was really aware of my own limitations and what I needed to learn. So, what better place to learn than people who care about social entrepreneurship, care about the community, great executive director, great president, great CEO, like learning from them on how to make decisions and how to manage like budgets and cash flow and all of those things, really important for me. And then when I did join the tea full time, I had staff already in place. So I wasn't lonely. I had a team who was already doing the manufacturing in our facility. I had a team who was like doing sales and marketing. And then coming in, I was able to just focus on these are the areas where it is not thriving. What can I do? And at this point, we transitioned not just like we have a brand like the Sarjesa Tea brand. We acquired another business called Buzz Nutrition, and our manufacturing facility makes products for brands across Canada and the US. So we really have three distinct businesses under the Sarjesa umbrella. And that's kind of been a huge learning for me because each business needs different things. And so really focusing on how are we allocating resources to each business and which parts and how can they work together towards a shared goal or a common why.
So let's go back. I think I need a little bit more context around the you working full time elsewhere and then coming into your company when stuff is already established. Did you have a new partner at that point? Was somebody managing the business? And what did that team look like? Like how much time were you committing to building out the team and kind of finding manufacturers, putting product together, deciding what sales are going to look like, where the target market is, all that kind of thing?
Yeah, so we have our own manufacturing facility. We've always self manufactured. We have 9 tea bag machines, and they're going like really fast. And so I am okay at teabagging. I wouldn't say I'm the best. I knew that. Like, you have to know where your skill set is, and you have to allow yourself the ability to grow into like being a CEO. So I think when I joined the tea, we were at like 12 to 15 people in different roles. So we had manufacturing, which included research and development, production, quality, logistics. And then we had sales and marketing and accounting and HR. And not all of these roles are like they're part-time, they're full-time, and they're contract, depending on what I needed. And so I had been establishing that team and those systems the whole way, but was still managing it. So I'd work 4 days a week at Trico. And then the fifth day, I would be on site. But in the evenings, I'd be organizing and doing the like
Right.
strategy and all of those pieces. And I don't think that people should start at like, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm going to do it all. I think that you get to a point where if you want to grow your business, especially in a business like manufacturing, where there are some really important pieces where you cannot afford to get them wrong, and they are really technical, really important pieces like around quality and machines, um, you should always hire people who have those skills or find people that you can grow into that skill set by paying for training or different sorts of things.
I want to keep going on that piece because I think there's a huge lesson there from your experience to be able to, for somebody that's looking at starting a business or somebody that's part of a current startup to really be able to balance their involvement so that you can, as you're pointing out, make sure that the systems themselves can kind of gain traction and do what they're going to do. But I want to go back and just get a little bit more understanding of earlier you said it was something like I couldn't have imagined that Sardessa was going to become what it is today at whatever point in time that was. I think as you were probably still in school. Was there a transition when you did see it becoming what it is today? Like at what point did you kind of go, oh, there's something bigger here, and if I just do these things, then I can make it into this kind of three-pronged company that's doing all of this stuff?
I think there have been many moments like that. You know, you get really good at spotting opportunities and evaluating which ones you want to put your resources into. But when I worked at Trico, I had two coaches, Brittany and Dan. And Brittany and Dan, they have this exercise that you do, which is a mountain where you plot out where you want to go ultimately, and then all the key thresholds up the mountain.
Right.
And when you map that out, you start to see very quickly that's like, oh, I could go this way up the mountain, or I could go this other way. And then it really is about like looking at what you would need at each different threshold. And that mental preparedness was so important to helping me develop the understanding of like, this could be a lot bigger than I think it could be, or it could be smaller. I can contract it, I can grow it. It's ultimately up to me and like what I'm willing to do with different parts of it.
And I think so much of that is coming back to your comments about being intentional. I mean, one of the other things that I hear often is growth for growth's sake, right? Like just growing a business, whatever that might be, having more employees or having a bigger top line, but not focusing on the bottom line, and just growing for growth's sake. And you kind of talked about kind of those in your early days. There was the idea of going out, get venture capital, and just grow like crazy just for the sake of growing. And I think all of what you're talking about is very, very intentional. Did you have like a formal business plan, business case? Did you go out and get funding at any point that you had to show kind of what the modeling was and what that future was going to look like in order to secure financing?
No, I am bootstrapped. I have debt
Wow.
for the tea bag machines. Um, and for, yeah, like I think I took a loan for my initial inventory. Um,
Right.
but I did like just because I didn't have a business plan doesn't mean that I wasn't rigorously trained. Like when I worked at Trico Charitable Foundation as a summer student, one of the things that they did was they had us test all of their curriculum on our own businesses. And so you did cash flow, you did stakeholders, you did all of these different things, and that rigorous training taught me that you can be prepared in a way that actually helps you move forward. You're not just writing it down for the sake of writing it down to show somebody else. You're doing it to learn and to push yourself.
Right.
And that has been such an important skill for me.
On the three streams that you talked about, the manufacturing, the manufacturing for others, and buzz, yeah. So tell me about those three streams and kind of what the evolution was of realizing that there's capacity here to manufacture for others, or what those revelations were in order for you to kind of like, I'm really fascinated by this. You're managing capacity and doing things so intentionally around growth and making sure that there's you have the resources to do the things that you're doing. So how did those decisions come about?
Yeah. So I fully launched Sarjesa as Sarjesa in December of 2017. And then I worked at it for like 2 years, just selling tea, building the business, going through multiple iterations. Like we got our first tea bag machine. I started sourcing from farms, all of this stuff to kind of build its ability to scale, the infrastructure and intention behind it. Then in 2020, we got our first Sobeys order, and it was massive. And at this
Wow.
point, yeah, yeah, it was a lot. And I was working out of a commercial kitchen. Um, and I was making tea all night. And it was just me. Yeah. And
Oh no.
then, well, my partner, Wally, his family is the Sangsters family. And so they're involved in health foods. And Wally knows a lot about that world, and Wally's mom and dad know so much. And his cousin Daryl has been like totally impactful in helping me figure out how to do things. And so when I was making tea all night, Wally came one night and he was just like, "This is not how this is gonna grow." And so we rented our first facility, And at that point, I was starting to get a lot of attention from other tea makers because we have a reputation for strong sourcing, and the ability to do different formats. And so people started come to me asking if I would make their tea because they were having a lot of trouble procuring ingredients during COVID. And so I was like, sure, because my social impact is tied to my supply chain. And so the more, the merrier. And so we started making tea for other businesses, as well as like fulfilling our Sobeys POs and growing our tea business. And Buzzed, like this, I guess, when did we start manufacturing for Buzzed? Maybe 2.5 years ago. They were a customer of ours. And so they let me know that they were looking to exit the business. And when we do grocery store demos, people always want milk and sugar in their tea. But it drives me crazy because I have to offer them something that isn't something I own. And so Buzzed is a dairy-free superfood creamer, so it's made with coconut milk and then has functional ingredients in it as well, and vanilla. And it tastes really good. And so we were just like, well, what if we purchased it? Because the social impact and the why of supporting women is dependent on our supply chain and applying what we've learned to different verticals. But also, we could expand it by using the same model with different products in customer baskets so that instead of just having one product that people go to for like impact, they can be shopping for like an assortment of products that all are working towards the same impact.
That is really, really amazing. That one, I mean, with so many things in business, it's like, you know, a perfect storm, a timing piece. Certainly there's an element of luck, that, you know, all of that timing worked out, just for, you know, for Buzzed, a complementary product that is going to give you that vertical, that is going to be a consumer driven, you know, complementary piece in their basket, as you say. All of that happens just kind of in that ecosystem and at the right time. So obviously a different manufacturing environment for Buzzed. Are you keeping it as a separate label and kind of its own product and its own manufacturing?
Yeah, I think that we will. I really like the concept of having a portfolio of companies that's working towards a shared why and shared goal. I think the big thing that people forget or don't think about all the time with companies is we think we have to be these huge businesses in order to like do cool things like
Yep.
this. And you don't.
Yep.
You can be small and you can be intentional and you can still have the best adventures.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. What does that look like from a management? Like, are you running them as two separate operations, or is there crossover in kind of some of the sales? And like, obviously, you're able to use economies of scale or efficiencies between for both products.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have like obviously a shared sales and marketing team for both brands.
Yeah,
And like Buzzed is a brand that fits into our portfolio. It's not its full a full separate entity. And that it will eventually probably spin out as its own thing again, but it's just now housed within Sarjesa. We use economies of scale because we have a lot of similar ingredients that we use for our latte powder products. And then also, it's taking the knowledge that we have of like supply chain, specifically our sourcing framework that we developed, and then trying to apply it to new markets.
absolutely amazing. I like all of all of it is so intentional. I keep using that word, but I really really like it. Um, Tell me a little bit about the social enterprise piece, the this idea of reinvesting back in the company. I mean, every company wants profit. Every company wants to generate a profit in order to continue to contribute to the business and the prosperity of the business and the future of the business. And certainly, you're even more motivated for that. Well, maybe not more motivated, but your motivation is around the why. You want to keep that contribution to the community environment, and what your that contribution is. What does that kind of internal conversation with your leadership team and your staff and your stakeholders look like when you're talking about profit in the best sense of the word, when you're a social enterprise, and kind of where that direction is going to continue to go to contribute to those social projects?
Yeah, I think social entrepreneurship is sometimes misunderstood. People think that it's like donating a portion of proceeds or hiring people. And that for sure is part of it, but I don't think it's the whole conversation. The Trico Charitable Foundation has a really great curriculum on how you blend social and entrepreneurial endeavors so that they're not two separate pieces. They're so intertwined that you can't separate them. And those are the type of business models that I find really exciting. And we experiment a lot with different social impact projects that we have. One of the ones that we are implementing right now, it's been a long time because it took a long time to get it developed and get people on board, is our social impact framework for sourcing ingredients. So we work specifically to support women throughout our supply chain, and we do that in like a number of different ways, but then also looking at how we can shift mindset through our packaging, through product design, and then how our end products actually serve women. And the serving of women through our end products is something that's taken a long, long time because we are reliant on a Health Canada license to be able to make health claims for our products. And so we can't say, oh, this tea will be um, wonderful for treating X, Y, or Z,
Right.
or supports X, Y, or Z without having the proper approvals and like substantiation in place. And so those things have been really important. I think getting really clear on like why your business exists and how you're going to measure is something we're really clear on why, but measurement took a long time, and it will probably continue as like the environment changes to be something important that we revisit, because there are things that are easy to track and there are things that are harder to track, and like wanting to really make sure we're having the impact that we want to have.
So tell me about that, the connection to your initial inspiration of starting having a product that is representative of the communities that would support murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls, and kind of that entire concept. How did you first start to source ingredients that you felt was representative of of the communities, or was that even something that you were concerned of? Was it just to have good tea?
No, at the beginning, I wanted to have dancers on every package. And so we worked with Jonathan to develop the art for our boxes. And then we were going to donate a portion of sales towards supporting an Indigenous led healing lodge. And we did that for a number of years. But I wasn't like super concerned about the ingredients. We used one Canadian grown ingredient for every blend, or ingredients that were local, like could be locally grown. I think at the beginning we didn't have any farms that we worked with. And then when I launched Sarjesa, I was able to start working with local farms as well as like international ethical farms. And then the product development piece really came about after I had started building the brand and the design around it. We worked with elders to make sure that we really understood the ingredients we were sourcing as well as like how they could be impactful in the community. And then we really did a lot of conversation with community members about like how we could do this in a way that was ethical. And we still get a lot of kickback. You know, I'm not Indigenous. My mom's from Trinidad and my dad is from Drumheller. And so that is a point of tension for people when they see the packaging. We have lots of different dancers, lots of different women represented, but people sometimes think that I shouldn't have Indigenous dancers or Black dancers on my packaging because I'm not either of those identities. And so, currently thinking about that a lot, but also feeling like well supported enough in community that, and like the intention behind the dancers was always that these women are not reflected in packaging in a way where they're in motion, in movement, have agency. And so combating some of the not negative imagery, but like challenging imagery that you see in grocery formats. And so we think a lot about that. Um, our ingredients currently, we're doing a lot of really great sourcing. We're still in that stage though where we have like maybe 150 ingredients, and 100 of them we use a lot of, and 50 of them we use only small amounts. So finding
Right.
that right fit with like, okay, when do we move something from a
Yeah.
supplier that we know is ethical to like a direct to farm relationship is always challenging. When do we look at like fair wild sourcing or sourcing from like foragers, and how can we draw community in? Because a lot of this like traditional ecological knowledge is being lost as people age and retire from the industry.
All like it's incredible the myriad of challenges that are outside of kind of the traditional scope of business that you're contemplating, and I mean it all comes obviously from a good place, with the great intention, and rightly, people, there's going to be feedback, whether it's positive or negative for this type of thing. So
But that's the best part is we want
yeah,
the feedback. We want people to
yeah,
think critically about the products they're using and offer feedback. And my favorite thing is like when somebody offers up a like a criticism, if they could please offer like some solutions or
right,
suggestions, because like,
right.
you know, we're limited by what we can imagine. And if you've been socialized under a specific set of constraints or systems, you're not going to see all the possibilities. And I think that's for any one person.
Yeah. And I think for you to be that open to it is the first point, right? Like that there has to be an acceptance to that feedback, and an appreciation and understanding for the motivations behind it, and where it's coming from. So on that note, I do want to ask, whether you have metrics or not, if you have a sense of, and this kind of ties into the conversation we just had, um, what the motivations are for your consumers, for your clients. Are they the folks who are buying, are they motivated, do they know the story, are they aware of all of the background of the motivation and the social enterprise, social entrepreneurship piece, where the contributions are going, or are they just buying really good tea? They had a really good cup of tea from your or coconut milk, one of your products, they really enjoyed it, or is some of the story part of that motivation?
Buzzed is definitely people are not buying it because of the social impact, because people don't know
Okay,
about it.
sure.
That's just the underneath. But Sarjesa, we have two kind of main consumer groups: the people who are buying us because of the social impact, and the people who are buying us because it's the best tea. Uh, or they think it's the best tea. I have a lot of tea making friends who would debate me on this. And I think what we want is people to be buying it because of the experience it's creating for them. And the experience is not just the packaging and the social impact, it's the experience of drinking the tea itself. Um, and so that is something we're constantly working on improving and refining, to the point where we're testing out different packaging formats, different designs to speak to different consumers in different markets. Like people who buy tea at the grocery store are very different than people who buy specialty tea. And I've always been really clear that Sarjesa is not a specialty tea brand. We're an everyday tea drinking experience. And that has been challenging because we're not interesting enough to be purchased at a specialty like fair, but we're
Right,
also
right.
fancy enough
Not
that
Tetley.
a lot of people get scared off by how fancy we are, even though we're price competitive on the shelf.
Yeah, yeah. I did my thesis and my MBA, around the motivation of consumers to buy. Now, this was within a totally different. Well, maybe adjacent sector. It was in wine. But when wine growers and manufacturers are looking at the sustainability aspect and kind of ESG in the full context, how much of all of those efforts, organic, sustainable, etc., how much of that is the consumer willing to pay for? If there is a premium on that wine, how much is the, and everything that I was able to find, even through my own, surveys and research, was that consumers want to think that they'll pay a premium for sustainable and organic and all of the ESG component of a good bottle of wine. But the reality is, when they get to the shelf, they will compare on price and label and the taste of the wine, the quality of the wine. Like
Yeah.
it kind of, the inspiration is there, but when push comes to shove, it's always kind of coming back to those same metrics. So you need a good cup of tea to continue to contribute to the social piece, right? Or I'd
Yeah.
assume.
One of the most amazing things is when you can actually make your social impact your competitive advantage on price or
Right.
flavor or things like that,
Right.
which is a lot of the experiments we're doing right now, especially with our peppermint and with growing different herbs. We do a lot of testing and a lot of like looking at hydroponic solutions and like different ways that we can bring some of that knowledge in house, because I think that that is where the magic can happen, is when you can blend the social and the entrepreneurial in a way where your product quality is better, in a way that customers are willing and able to pay more for. This is what I learned at the Trico Foundation about how to do business for social good. And I think it's really important. We haven't nailed it yet.
But then you need to be able to tell the story, right? And you only have 6 sides to the box and so much surface area to be able to tell the consumer about all of that. And that was certainly, in my research, that was the challenge, is the label's only so big on the bottle of wine.
Right. But also, I don't know if consumers need to know if the product is like measurably better in
Yes.
taste
Yes.
or quality,
Yeah.
it won't
Right.
matter. Hmm.
Right.
And like
Yeah.
anything else, they can go to the site.
Yeah. Yeah. And then if they're you get them by product, then over time they organically, or just through virtue of connecting with the product on a regular basis, they start to know the story, and then that connects as well. Um, I feel like we could talk about this all day, Alexandra, because this was really, really interesting and enjoyable. I want to thank you so much. Maybe we can, once you've acquired a couple more companies, get you back and talk about those experiences as well. I wish you all the very, very best.
Thank you so much, Trevor.
Really great. Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode of Business is Fucking Hard. Please remember that this show is meant to create community and share ideas in the business world. For advice specific to your business, talk to an expert in your industry. Please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out on Instagram and LinkedIn, and invite others to do the same. This episode was hosted by me, Trevor Coote, and produced and edited by Alex Harris. Thanks for tuning in, and talk to you next time.